Okay, here we are with homework 4.00. This is actually review homework, so it's going to be reviewing solving equations. The one thing that I'm going to recommend when you're doing these is focus on sort of the DCMS process that we talked about. All right. For the shorter ones, it's not a big deal, but for the longer problems, this can help you kind of break them down and see where you have to go. The D stands for distribute, so whenever there's distribution, that's where you're going to want to start your problem. The C is combine, so combine like terms, if there's any like terms that you can combine. The M stands for move the variable, so that's when you're ready to move the variable if you've got variables on both sides of the equal sign. And then after you do those first three steps, you should be ready to solve because you should only have a two-step equation at that point. So that's kind of the process that you can use to break down the longer equations. All right, now the first few don't really need that. These are some of the more simple kind of two-step equations where you just want to focus on having things cancel out and using opposites. So the opposite of minus 8 is to plus 8. So you plus 8 to both sides. You got to keep the equation in balance. You end up with 5x equals 20. Divide both sides by 5. X is going to equal 4. Okay. So number 2, same exact problem, only different numbers. Here we've got to subtract by 3, so the opposite is to add 3. All right, so you're going to end up with 7y equals 21. The opposite of multiplying by 7 is dividing by 7, so y equals 3. All right, let's take a look at number 3. Now, number 3 might look a little more intimidating, but it's really not that different from the two that we just did. All right, we're going to start using the same process. The opposite of subtracting by 4 is adding 4. So we're going to add 4 to both sides. We're left with c divided by 5 equals a positive 1. Now on these problems up here, it was 5 times x, so the opposite was to divide. It was 7 times y, so the opposite was to divide. Here we have c divided by 5, so the opposite is going to be to multiply. So we're just going to multiply both sides by 5. These will cancel out, and you're going to be left with c equals 5. So as long as you kind of stick with that premise of, using opposites to cancel out numbers, you'll be in good shape for these. All right, number 4 is kind of back to one of the more normal-looking ones. But we're going to do the opposite of add 8, which is to subtract 8. Make sure you're kind of keeping track of your negatives here. That's a negative 3m, and then 2 minus 8 is going to be negative 6. Divide both sides by negative 3, and then when you have a negative divided by a negative, that's going to become a positive 2. All right, number 5 is where they start to get a little more involved. Anytime we have parentheses, we want to think about distribution. Now, we've got this negative sign in front of the parentheses, so what you have to remember is that there's that invisible 1 there that we just don't write. It's kind of a math shorthand. So what we're really multiplying both of these pieces by is a negative 1. So that's going to work out to be negative 3. A negative times a negative becomes positive, so plus 10y equals 12. After the distribution, we're back to sort of just a two-step equation. The opposite of negative 3 is positive 3, so we're going to add 3 to both sides. 10y equals 15. Divide both sides by 10, and we're going to end up with y equals 1.5, or if you want to write this as a fraction, you could write it as 3 over 2. All right, let's take a look at the back. Again, we've got some more just sort of distribution problems here. So in this first one here, we're going to take that 2, we're going to multiply it by both pieces. So 2 times x is 2x, 2 times 5 is 10. Equals 9. We're going to subtract 10 from both sides. Again, focusing on opposites there. So 2x equals negative 1. Divide both sides by 2. We're going to end up with another decimal here, so you can either write that as negative 0.5 or negative 1/2 if you prefer having it as a fraction. Either one of those are good. All right, moving over to number 7. 7 is tricky because there's a couple of things that make kids uneasy. One, there's a 0 on the other side, and people don't like 0. It's just another number. Don't let it freak you out. And then 2, we have to recognize what we're actually distributing. All right? Even though there's no number here, we have to remember that there's that invisible 1, and that's what's getting distributed to both of these pieces. So it's going to become x, negative 1 times 4 is minus 4. Negative 1 times negative x is positive x equals 0. All right? If we think back to the DCMS that we talked to on the first side, we started with distribution. Next comes to combine our like terms. We have x's on the same side here, so those are considered like terms. 1x plus 1x is going to give us 2x minus 4 equals 0. And now we're back to sort of a two-step equation. So add 4 to both sides, add 4 to both sides. 2x equals 4. Divide by 2, divide by 2. X equals 2. Okay. All right. 3 more to go. This one is a throwback to Unit 3 where we're going to be doing some cross multiplication. So we're going to do x minus 2 and 14. And then we're going to do x plus 9 and 3. All right. When there's more than one thing on the top or the bottom of the fraction, that's where you got to make sure that you're using your parentheses. So this becomes 3 parentheses x plus 9 equals 14 parentheses x minus 2. Now we're back to a regular equation, so we go through our steps. We're going to start with distribution. We're going to have to do it on both sides. So we're left with 3x plus 27 equals 14x minus 28. Now, there's nothing to combine. We can't combine these. They're not like terms. We can't combine these. But we have variables on both sides. So this is the m of our DCMS, and we have to move the variable. Usually, our recommendation is to move the smaller variable because you're less likely to end up with negatives in that case. So subtract 3x, subtract 3x. We're left with 27 equals 11x minus 28. And now we're back to the two-step equation, so we're ready to solve. The opposite of subtracting 28 is adding 28. 55 equals 11x. Divide both sides by 11. X is going to equal 5. Okay. Okay, number 9, we have variables on both sides. You're going to notice that I already put the 1 in there next to the a, so I can think about that as 1a. So again, we're going to move our smaller variable, so that's subtracting 1a from both sides. 3a minus 1a is going to be 2a plus 4 equals 18. Subtract 4 from both sides, minus 4, 2a equals 14. Divide by 2, a equals 7. So we're good there. Okay. All right, moving on to the last problem, saving the best for last. All right, this is where we're going to take full advantage of DCMS. All right, on this side, we'll be distributing the negative 2. On this side, we have to be careful. We're not distributing the 14 because there's actually this invisible 1 in there that we have to distribute. So that's what's going to get passed on to both of those, not the 14. The 14 is not actually next to the parentheses. So after this, we're going to end up with 14 minus 2m minus 5 equals negative 4m minus 16. All right. After D comes C for combined like terms, so nothing to combine over here, but on this side we can combine the 14 and the minus 5 to get 9 minus 2m. Notice how when I'm combining things, I'm not doing opposites. I'm not trying to get things to cancel out. I'm just taking these two and I'm joining them into kind of a single number there. So 14 minus 5 is 9 minus 2m equals negative 4m minus 16. I'm going to move my smaller variable, and since these are both negatives, the negative 4 is actually smaller than the negative 2, so plus 4m to both sides, plus 4m. I get 9 plus 2m equals negative 16. Right, so good, so far so good. Now I'm kind of to the last step. I'm ready to solve because I have a two-step equation. Subtract 9 from both sides. 2m equals negative 25. Divide both sides by 2. M equals negative 12.5. Or if you prefer a fraction, we can write that as negative 25 over 2. All right. Hope this was of help. Have a nice day.